Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, how to voice the radio. So today, we're going to be talking about a new Marshadow card. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is a new Marshadow, and this one, I believe, is going to see a lot of play. Although, before we start off, let's be super clear about this. This is some of the cutest, loveliest artwork that we have seen in a very long time. Just don't worry about what Marshadow's about to do. Just, he's cute, he's lovely, let's just leave it there. Now, in terms of the basics here, Marshadow's got 60 HP. 60 HP is crucial, ladies and gentlemen, because it means that it can be searched out with Professor Elm's lecture, and in a format where our Pokemon search options are going to be limited, and this is going to be played as a tech, that is wonderful. Now, the weakness to darkness isn't great. I mean, look, you've got 60 HP. It's not exactly going to be amazing regardless, but I will say that there are a couple of evil Tal we're going to have that will get a KO because of the weakness, boo, hiss, etc. Now, the resistance to fighting is rather good. Again, it's a very, very weak Pokemon. It's only got 60 HP. It's not going to stay around for long, but it's got a resistance to a good typing, and I like that. And then we see the retreat cost of 1. Retreat cost of 1 means a skateboard and U-turn board will give you free retreat. I'm all in favour of this. And then it's a psychic Pokemon, so maybe you play around with Spell Tag. Maybe you drop 4 damage counters any way you like on your opponent's field when it gets KO'd. Just saying. There is a bit of an option there. Plus you're hitting weakness on Mewtwo and Mew, which looks like it might be one of the, if not the best Pokemon come post-rotation. So that's kinda cool. Now, there's only one attack here, but the attack is an absolute doozy. 1 Psychic, 2 Colourless Energy. Copy one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks, excluding GX attacks. I know, right? You just get to copy an attack from your opponent's active. Now, it can be a GX attack, but anything else, copy away, ladies and gentlemen. Copy away. And this should remind a bunch of you of Mimikyu. That's the Mimikyu from Guardians Rising, that if your opponent's Pokemon used an attack last turn, other than a GX attack, copy it. Here's the thing, though. There are multiple reasons, 2 primarily, why this is so much better than Mimikyu. Firstly, it's got 60 HP. It can be searched out with Professor Elm's lecture. That's huge. Secondly, it's much more in your control. The thing is, when it comes to Mimikyu, you are relying on the attack that your opponent just used. So your opponent can try doing shenanigans where they use an attack that's just enough to KO you without then exposing themselves next turn. So let's say, for argument's sake, they've got a Reshiram and Charizard. Well, Reshiram and Charizard's got an attack which does 230 damage. That's huge. But they've also got Outrage. And Outrage might end up only doing 70 this turn. So if they're against a Mimikyu, they can use Outrage, do 70, get the KO, without opening themselves up next turn. Means you can still Outrage them next turn, but that's all you're actually allowed to do. Your opponent can try and lock you out of their better attacks. Whereas here, any attack on the active Pokemon, and you get to copy it, and you're off. That gives you a lot more control. Now, the downside is we're not going to have much gusting post-rotation. We're not going to have Guzma or Counter Catcher or things like that. But we are still going to have Great Catcher. That's a new card we looked at the other day, link in the description, whereby you can discard 2 cards from your hand and then drag an EX or GX into the active. Non-GXs won't work, unfortunately, but as long as it's an EX or a GX, you can drag it active, and you're good to go, ladies and gentlemen. And that means that you can manipulate this a little bit. You can drag a Reshiram and Charizard into the active so that you can use their attack. But the other thing it means is that you can only KO if a Pokemon has got an attack that KOs themselves. So let's take something like Blacephalon, for instance. If you happen to have a bunch of fire energy scattered around the field, you can copy its attack and KO it. But outside of that, it's not going to be great. I mean, I told you about Mewtwo and Mew and you're hitting for weakness. Well, going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, that was a little bit of a red herring. Because you see, Mewtwo and Mew have no non-GX attacks. They've got a GX attack and an ability that lets them use attacks from other GXs on their bench or in their discard pile. But they don't actually have any normal attacks, and that's all you're allowed to copy. So against Mewtwo and Mew, it does nothing. And Reshiram and Charizard, you can do 230, which is great, but you're not actually getting a KO here, unfortunately, which is it's a little bit of a pain, honestly. But maybe you soften them up. Maybe you use something like Shrine of Punishment, and then they're in range, and then you get a KO. And in that respect, cool. Sounds good to me. You've just got to remember that it's not always going to work. You're not always going to be getting a KO here. So let's say, for argument's sake, you sit there and you're opposite something like Celebi and Venusaur. You're not getting a KO on Celebi and Venusaur. Now, you can do 150, or you can do 50, but also leave them burned, confused, and poisoned, and that's fine. But you can't actually KO them. And a lot of the best Pokemon at the moment don't have attacks that can KO them, which is a little bit sad. One thing you can do is find a Pokemon that's weak to Psychic, and then use their own attacks against them. So something like Marshadow and Machamp, I mean, come on. Had to use that as an example. We're talking about Marshadow. They've got an attack that does 160, which ordinarily wouldn't get a KO on a Marshadow and a Machamp. But because you're hitting for weakness, you're copying it with a Psychic typing. Now you are getting the KO because you are hitting for weakness, and that is absolutely beautiful. Big fan, ladies and gentlemen. Big fan. It's very situational. It is situational on what your opponent's got active. It's situational on what your opponent's got out. You're not going to be able to use it to get every KO ever. Mimikyu, for instance, was really good against Tapu Bulu, but far less effective against Metagross GX. But now, anytime you see a Pokemon that's got an attack that can KO themselves, you've got to be thinking seriously about this and going, hang on a second, this is pretty cool. I mean, a Pokemon that we mentioned in our Alolan Persian GX video earlier was Persian GX. And Persian GX has a nice little Vengeance attack, which does 10 damage, plus 30 more for each Pokemon you've got in your discard pile, up to 180. Now that actually means you're only hitting 190 and Persian's got 200, but this is where Shrine of Punishment is really going to help. Plus you're probably playing this in a Psychic deck, so you may well end up using Giratina. Drop some damage, you're fine. And remember, you've got Shrine of Punishment, you've got Giratina, you've got Spell Tag. So let's say you are against something like Reshiram and Charizard. Yes, you are actually 40 short, but then if Mimikyu gets KO'd with a Spell Tag attached, that will do it. Now, I haven't mentioned Malamar yet. It's a very popular Pokemon, a very widely played Pokemon. But let's mention Malamar now nice and quickly. Malamar is going to adore this. Malamar lets you accelerate one Psychic Energy from your discard to one of your bench Pokemon per Malamar per turn. So clearly here we can pay the attack cost very nicely. Double Colorless Energy is rotated. Triple Acceleration Energy cannot be used because Marshadow is a basic. But you're fine. You're going to be absolutely fine here in terms of paying the attack cost because Malamar's going to come out here. And I do believe this is going to be a widely played tech in Malamar decks. We have seen Mimikyu see a fair bit of play, and this is frankly better than Mimikyu. So I'm giving it 4 Wassies, and I'm saying this Marshadow is a good card. But I'd like to know what you say about it. And you can say that stuff in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/TheWassie. patreon.com/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.